there's a credit for adoption expenses. It's a subject that I will confess I've never had any personal exposure to, and actually I never encountered it in my time as a financial advisor. But that's actually part of the point, sort of the point, which I'll explain later. First of all, yes, so there's a credit available for qualified adoption expenses. That's always been there. It's been a non-refundable credit. What changed with the Big Beautiful Bill Act is now up to $5,000 can be refundable. And in fact, that was $5,000 in 2025, and that's indexed for inflation. So 2026, it'll be some amount more than $5,000. There is a modified adjusted gross income phase out. All right, so there's a lot going on with the calculation though. There's a lot happening. And so what we ended up doing was we built a whole worksheet for it. And you'll see it, there's actually an entry point in two different places. One is in refundable tax credits and one is in non-refundable tax credits. They both take you to the same place. So here it is, adoption credit. Let's pop that open. There's a whole lot going on, like I said. But basically, you start with, you can list the children that you are claiming the qualified expenses for. So let's say that this person had, I don't know, $17,000 of qualified expenses. The calculation includes some of the like prior year credit. So I'll add this person. There's, like I said, there's a lot to the calculation. And in fact, you start to bring in things like previous year carryforwards in case you weren't able to claim some of it in previous years. And anyway, the point is there's a lot going on. And what you see at the bottom is like we try to break out like this is the allowable credit, but this is what you carried forward. So that's the total amount you could take. But then because of the nature of my income right now, I can only take this amount of non-refundable and this amount of refundable. And so I'm carrying for this amount. The point is, maybe like me, you won't really use this a lot or maybe ever in your career with your clients. The point though is what we're trying to do with the software is to give the visibility and transparency into how the calculation is working. I think taking it a step beyond just like, okay, enter the amount of the credit in this box. We're trying to help you walk through how the credit is derived. Now, it's still up to you as the advisor to understand how this works. It's not our job on the software side to teach you how the tax code works, but we do need to try to meet you halfway. We need to meet you as a tool that you use if you are armed with an understanding of how the tax code works, and we can help you make sure the data entry goes right, make sure you have transparency into how the calculations are working, and make sure that everything was entered the way you expected it to, and the behaviors, as you discuss with your client, are where they need to be. That's where we are going to try to meet you halfway more. I want to make more of these worksheet type of things in the software, again, so we can help you understand when we make these changes, when we make these decisions, that's how it's going to impact the client. Let me show you real quick actually what happens with range calc, because like I said, there is a phase out. So credits are funny, right? Because in the early, you'll see what happens with credits is they kind of offset, especially when you have refundable credits, they're offsetting all taxes, right? So here I have zero taxable. As I add income, there's zero tax cost to me. Eventually, I will actually get the full credit, right? Because recall that my total expenses for qualified adoption expenses exceeded my taxable income. So I only had this little non-refundable credit. I will eventually get enough income that non-refundable credit grows to the point where I can use the entirety of the available credit. So then there's no impact. But then once my modified gross income gets high enough, it phases out. And in fact, it phases out pretty quickly. So you'll see this very high plateau here where we're watching the entirety of that adoption credit phase out happening and the credit's going away. So again, maybe something that you'll never encounter in your time as a financial advisor, but just know that it's there if you do need it. And if you need it, we're doing our best to make sure that we can help you get the data entry done properly, understand how some of these levers and knobs work as we're dialing up and down how these non-refundable and refundable pieces of the credit work. And again, we're working very hard to have more and more of these types of worksheets throughout the software So you have much more confidence as you're dialing in on these things to make sure you're having a meaningful conversation with your clients.